Desert Center is fast becoming the newest ghost town in the desert. Currently, Desert Center has a population of less than 200 people. Desert Center is one halfway between Blythe and Indio on Interstate 10. 50 miles to Indio and 50 miles to Blythe. Before I-10 was constructed, the road through the Chuckwalla Valley was known as the Mecca Blythe Road. Steve and Lydia Ragsdale came to the area in 1921, when passing through the Chuckwalla Valley on their way to Los Angeles on a business trip. He met an old prospector named Grundyke, who owned a piece of property on what is now the southeast corner of the Chuckwalla Valley Raceway. Being near the only road through the valley at the time, the property had a well, windmill and some living quarters. Steve saw this midpoint, between the Palo Verde Valley and the Coachella Valley, as having huge potential as a supply station for both humans and autos. With a 3-year lease on the parcel, Mr. Ragsdale loaded up 2 farm wagons, his wife Lydia, and their 4 kids, Thurman, Thelma, Herbert, and Stanley, and left the Palo Verde Valley and established his family home in what would later become Desert Center. In 1922, he opened his first cafe store and service station garage, alongside the single-lane desert trail that passed between the 2 valleys. He advertised, "No drunks, no dogs. We prefer dogs." Desert Center became an important halfway point for all travelers. Gas was pumped by hand, from a 55-gallon drum, and a Model T truck was modified to serve as a tow truck. Lydia, later known as Mom Ragsdale, administered first aid, served as waitress, and cook for all travelers passing through the remote desert town. In 1925, the dirt road connecting the Palo Verde Valley and the Coachella Valley, known as the Blythe Mecca Road, was slotted for improvement. At the time the road was just merely a trail, and when driving cars of the day they would overheat and break down. They had narrow tires and would get stuck in the sand. The road would be relocated 5 miles south of the existing dirt road. Stephen A. Ragsdale referred to himself as Desert Steve. By 1927 he had 700 acres altogether and moved his entire establishment, transferring some buildings, and pouring an adobe-style concrete structure that still stands today as the Desert Center Cafe. Attached to the cafe was a gas station and service garage. The first post office was a box on the cafe counter. Lydia Ragsdale was appointed Desert Center's first postmaster by President Franklin Roosevelt, in March of 1934. Across the street from the cafe you will find a series of buildings, all of which were built in 1942, on the Army Air Base, which is where the Chuckwalla Valley Raceway is today. They were purchased by Mr. Ragsdale, and transported to their current location. They are currently registered with the Riverside County Historical Committee and as such cannot be destroyed or altered. Mr. Ragsdale was a very resourceful man. When unable to form a school district because there were not enough children to meet the requirement, he ran an ad in the Los Angeles paper for a mechanic for the service station with one qualification: having a large family. The man who answered the ad had 8 kids. The town combined their resources and built the first school in Desert Center, and the county provided a school teacher. Steve Ragsdale also wrote poetry, and along with Harry Oliver, co-founded the annual Peg Leg Smith Liars Contest, in Anza Borrego. The Liars Contest is a meeting of old desert rats and gold-seeking enthusiasts, seeing who could tell the biggest lie. Sometime in the 1940s, he dug his own grave and set up his epitaph over it. He originally wanted to be planted in Desert Center. He even erected his own marker and dug his own grave. In the June 23 paper, it read, "Steve Ragsdale is faced with a $25,000 lawsuit for the drowning of a 19-month-old baby. The baby's parents lived in Desert Center also. The baby fell into the pool, next to the Desert Center Cafe. The pool was unguarded. The next month, in July of 1950, Desert Steve was sued again by a woman, who lived in Desert Hot Springs, who was also an employee in Desert Center. She accused Steve and another woman of throwing her into her car, and slammed the door on her ankle. She sued for $6,000. Instead, he left Desert Center in 1950 and retreated to his log cabin on top of Mount Santa Rosa. He lived there until he died, May 2, 1971. He is buried in the Coachella Valley Public Cemetery, Coachella, California. The July 11, 1968 paper read that his wife and son Stanley still run Desert Center.